Whether you're a first-time cruiser or a seasoned cruiser, making some of these mistakes when planning your Alaskan cruise can lead you to blow your budget, not have what you need, and miss out on some of the best that Alaska has to offer. Hi there, I'm Ilana from the website lifewellcruise.com. Welcome back to my channel. Now, we just returned yesterday from our very first Alaskan cruise. It was amazing. However, before I went on my cruise, I really did a lot of research to try to make sure that I was doing things as right as possible, that I was as prepared as possible, and of course that I would avoid any of those potential mistakes. Now, I'm happy to say on the most part, we did avoid a lot of those mistakes that some people might make on an Alaskan cruise. However, even with all my research, there were still some things that I would do differently on a future cruise. Now, even if you've done a Caribbean cruise or a warm weather cruise before, an Alaskan cruise is totally different in many ways. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the 13 mistakes that you absolutely want to avoid on an Alaskan cruise. Now, before I get started, I did want to mention that if you like this video, if you find it helpful, informative, or enjoyable in any way, then please do give this video a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Let's get started. Number one, not doing at least one night as a pre-cruise stay in either Seattle or Vancouver before your cruise. Now, I say this for two reasons. Number one, of course, we never want to fly in on the same day as the cruise because we can actually potentially miss the cruise if there's a delay in our flight or anything really kind of goes wrong. Now, for many of us, there's going to be a time change. So for instance, I live in the Eastern time zone. So when I did fly over to Vancouver, there was a 3-hour time difference. Now, we actually decided to fly in a couple of days before because we wanted to visit Vancouver. We had an absolutely wonderful time. However, for the time change alone, we wanted to be able to be adjusted for the time that we did go on our cruise. Now, once we went on our cruise, there was an additional 1-hour time change. So that means there were 4 hours difference. If we didn't arrive at least a day or two before the cruise, we would have been exhausted and it would have been really hard to get used to in the first couple of days of our cruise. Number two, not budgeting for the cost of excursions in Alaska. Now, an Alaskan cruise for many people is really a bucket list trip. It is not a cruise that you're going to do every single year, and you really do want to plan for some of those excursions. And yes, some of them are going to be a little bit pricey. So for instance, if you really want to go whale watching, you want to make sure that you do plan for that and budget for it. If you really want to go on the Mendenhall Glacier and you want to go up, as an example, by helicopter, perhaps that's something to budget for, even if you spend a little less in another port. Now, while there are many ports in Alaska that you can simply get off the cruise ship and walk around the town, a lot of the beauty in Alaska really is that landscape and those activities to do. So I do really suggest that you take a look at the excursions and you see what you are able to plan. Number three, now speaking of excursions, not booking your excursions early is a mistake that a lot of cruisers make. The fact is, excursions in Alaska, that will be very different from the Caribbean. They really do tend to sell out early, especially those real sort of bucket list excursions. So take a look on the cruise line's website as soon as you book your cruise, or at least as soon as they are available. And if there is something that you really want to do, I do suggest that you book that early. Now, if you didn't book an excursion through the cruise line and it is something that you really want to do, what you can do is you can get yourself on a wait list for the cruise line, and that does sometimes open up once you're on the cruise ship. The other alternative is to book an excursion when you do get off the cruise ship. You'll see that there are some private vendors that are there, but of course that is something that you do want to be careful of to make sure that you have enough time to get back to the cruise ship before it departs. Number four, a big mistake Alaskan cruisers make is not bringing rain gear. Now, something that you should expect if you go on an Alaskan cruise is it could and will likely rain. It may rain in Seattle, it may rain in Vancouver, it may rain while you're on the ship, it may rain when you're on excursions. You just never know. And that actually did happen to us. We were on an excursion in Ketchikan when it did start to rain a little bit. Now, lucky for us, it wasn't a really heavy rain and our excursion was able to go ahead. Even after we did get back at the cruise port, we still were able to walk around with that rain. But you do want to make sure that you have rain gear. So you want to make sure you have a waterproof jacket with a hood, and you want to make sure as well that you do have an umbrella. Now, while you can definitely get away with a poncho or a raincoat, if you do plan on taking some photos or taking some video, having that umbrella is very handy. Trust me. Now, another mistake that some people make when it comes to packing and planning for their Alaska cruise is not bringing any sunglasses. Now, even though you're obviously not going to be going to the beach when you're in Alaska, the fact is it does really get very bright and there are so many hours of daylight. And truthfully, if it wasn't raining, there was often a glare from the ocean. It was really very bright. And when we did sail through Glacier Bay, it was practically glowing. You definitely need to pack your sunglasses. Now, by the way, if you're planning an Alaskan cruise and trying to stay organized, I do have the LifeWell Cruise Ultimate Cruise Planner. Now, the LifeWell Cruise Ultimate Cruise Planner is a downloadable, printable cruise planner that you can print out the pages that you need for as many cruises that you go on. It will help you to stay organized with packing lists and more from the time that you book your cruise all the way through disembarkation. Now, if you are interested in seeing what's included in the LifeWell Cruise Ultimate Cruise Planner, I will leave all of the information linked down below in the description of this video. Now, when it comes to your day in Glacier Bay or glacier viewing, something that you want to make sure that you do is you get out onto the deck early. Now, in particular, you're going to have some rangers that are going to come on the cruise ship. They're going to tell you what you should be looking out for, and they may even open up the bow for all of the passengers to be able to see the glaciers. But there are so many people that are going to be out on deck, and people really do get up early and they scout those best locations. So I do suggest that you go and you grab some coffee or some hot chocolate before you head out to the deck. And while there's definitely a lot to see throughout the entire day, something that we found is that the wildlife seemed to be much more present in the morning. Now, speaking of all there is to see on Alaska, I hesitated to share this one because I do think that any type of cabin that you get for an Alaskan cruise is still going to give you an amazing experience. However, not booking a balcony on an Alaskan cruise is a potential mistake. Now, I say this simply because even for me, I didn't realize how much there was to see in Alaska almost the entire time. Now, every single day you have at least probably 16, 18, even 20 hours of daylight. And that means there is just so much to see if you like to wake up early, even at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. And you can watch the landscape go by even from your bed. Now, something else that's pretty cool is you'll actually see marine life at any time during your cruise. And as a matter of fact, there was one time my husband was sitting on the chair at the desk and he actually saw 3 or 4 orcas that were swimming right close to the ship. Now, if we didn't have a balcony, we never would have seen that sight. Now, by the way, if you're somebody who likes to sit out on the balcony, if it's warm enough, or even go out on the deck, just a little tip is there will be marine life potentially at any point during your cruise. If you'll just take your time and watch, you're almost guaranteed to see seals, sea lions, whales, and more. Now, a common mistake when it comes to booking an Alaskan cruise is thinking that they're all alike. And of course, they aren't. So not only are the cruise lines different and the cruise ships different, but at the same time, you have itineraries that can be very different. You have inside passage cruises leaving from Vancouver, round trip Alaska cruises leaving from Seattle. You have different ports of call. You have southbound cruises and northbound cruises where you might need to pick up a flight before or after your cruise. So these are all things to be aware of. Now, something that I didn't really notice before my cruise, but I definitely did notice it when I was on my cruise, is to pay attention to the actual length of time that your cruise ship is going to be in port. Some cruise ships are going to leave a little bit earlier. You may also want to pay attention to what port your cruise ship is at, because in some of those Alaskan cruise ports, you might have your cruise ship docked right in the downtown area, whereas you might be on a cruise ship that's docked 10 or 15 minutes out of that downtown area. And you do want to take that into account because it might affect what you're planning to do for the day in that cruise port. Now, before I went on my Alaskan cruise, something I was very concerned about was making sure that I wouldn't be cold on my cruise. So I really did a lot of research on this because I had seen some people's videos where they said they were cold and it was rainy and it was damp and they just weren't dressed appropriately. So I really made sure that I was dressed warmly, but also that I understood the concept of layering. And I do think that we did this pretty well. And of course, I'm from Canada. So something that you'll want to do is make sure in terms of layering that you bring either a t-shirt or a long sleeve shirt in like a t-shirt material. On top of that, ideally, put like a zippy sweater and make sure it has a hood. We found out that a hood really is important because sometimes it gets windy, sometimes it drizzles for just a few minutes, and a hood on that sweatshirt is just really handy. On top of that, have a thin puffer jacket that's perfect because it's comfortable enough to move around. And those puffer jackets, ideally you find one that's water repellent, and that is going to be good for most of the days that you're on your Alaskan cruise. Now, of course, if you have beautiful warm weather, you can wear just your t-shirt or just your t-shirt and sweatshirt and leave a jacket either on the ship or in your backpack during your excursion. Now, speaking of clothing, even if you're not a hat person, it is a mistake to not bring a hat on your Alaskan cruise. Something that we found is the mornings are very, very cool. The evenings can be also, and you really do want to spend a lot of time outdoors. Having a hat can mean that you maybe only wear a sweatshirt and a hat. It really does kind of keep you warm. And something else that you want to bring are gloves, but bring the kind that are those touch screen gloves. I'm actually going to leave a link for some Alaska Cruise Essentials. I'll leave that down below in the description of this video, but those were